In a school in an isekai world, the teacher is teaching her students. Calling Louise, her classmates don't want her to do magic because she is the worst student in school. Louise, ask him to shut up. The teacher asks you to make it carefully with the type of metal you will form with alchemy. Louise starts to do her spell. The scene changes to the pervert teacher, where he realizes that he hasn't had any trouble this year. When he gets up, he starts massaging the two parts below, asking you to stop. He plays dumb, but remembers that tomorrow is family summoning day for the second year. The man's mouse can see the girl's underwear and says it is white. Getting angry, she starts hitting the man, who asks him not to do that. Soon after, he hears Louise destroying the entire room with her power. Louise destroyed the entire room with her spell. The girl's classmate had told her not to let Louise do the spell. People get angry because the girl's success rate is 0 to this day, which is why her nickname is Zero. The teacher ended up fainting thanks to Louise's wrong spell. When talking to the director, he left the room and the girl's friends started making fun of her because she had been suspended. But nothing happened, because it wasn't your fault. The teacher asked Louise to use magic, leaving the students' warnings aside. Returning to his room, he says he had a bad day. But she always has a bad day, asking to know what type of invocation she will invoke tomorrow. Louise has complete confidence in her servant summoning magic. None of them will reach her feet. It will summon the most beautiful, loyal, and strongest family member to make everyone jealous. Asking to see what Tabitha thinks. When he arrives in his room, he thinks that Louise is very confident, and she may have something up her sleeve. But he soon returns to reality and shouldn't expect anything from Zero Louise. Us is following. The girl's friend is sure that Louise will be a failure. Louise, I just want you to be quiet. The girl's classmate managed to summon a salamander. The teacher asks to know if everyone has summoned it yet, but the girl remembers that Louise hasn't summoned her animal yet. Louise was hiding so she couldn't summon. Everyone is left wondering what kind of creature Louise will summon. Making her invocation, Louise summoned a human, and everyone starts laughing because she summoned a commoner. Asking the teacher to let him summon something new, he can't do something like that, because this is against the principles of the school. Even though it was something strange, she summoned a human. The boy tries to run away from the place. Louise grabs him by the neck, and has never heard of a person who managed to summon a commoner before. The teacher immediately asks him to sign the contract. Taking it, he kisses the boy on the mouth so he can sign the contract with him. Suddenly, the boy starts to get hot in a very sudden way. Asking them to shut up will end soon. The boy ends up fainting soon after. When he wakes up, he notices that he is sleeping like a flea-ridden animal and wants to go home. But she just wants you to shut up. Using his spell, he asks him to shut up and cast a feat to keep him quiet. But he ends up making a mistake, and the boy doesn't understand what's happening. Saito, he's going to attack the girl because I can't stand her anymore. Louise, can you understand what he's saying? The scene changes to the teacher. He is surprised by the mark that appeared on Saito's hand. Going back to the boy who doesn't know what's going on, doesn't understand these things about being summoned. Louise gets mad because she wishes she could have summoned a dragon or something. When he least expects it, the boy ends up running away. He passes by him soon after, asking you to wait a bit. I would like to know where you are going. Not being there for the boy to continue running, suddenly Louise appears and asks him to help her catch Saito. Close to being able to leave school, he suddenly ends up floating and is scared to death of what might happen. When looking at the sky, Saito notices that it has 2 moons, and cannot believe something like that. We are shown just before the boy goes to the other world. As he was walking, he saw a portal in front of him. Like an old woman who wants to take care of other people's lives all the time, approaches and ends up being invoked to another world. When he wakes up the next day, Saito is irritated because he is being treated like an animal. She asks her to be quiet and go wash her panties, and if she does, she will give the boy some food. When you're stressed, there's not much you can do. If you don't want to, you'll end up starving. When lying on a cloth that doesn't even cover your little toe, there's not much you can do but accept it. When she wakes up the next day, Louise has all her clothes cleaned and ironed by the boy. Asking her to get her underwear, Saito wants her to get it. But if you don't do this, you won't eat it. Needing to do this so as not to go hungry, he takes the drawer and goes into the girl. But she wants him to see her. When he has a servant, the noble never puts on his own clothes. Asking you to get dressed. She won't do that, and has already warned the boy. Saito realizes that she is quite beautiful up close. Upon arriving at the table, Saito is surprised by the food he will eat in this world. Louise asks him to stay calm and eat on the floor. The table is for nobles only. Saito just eats an old hard bread crying. When leaving the place, the girl is always making fun of Louise's face. But she asks Saito not to stand still like a post. At least she wants the boy to bring her some tea so she can drink it. Going to get the tea, he suddenly ends up getting scared and turning back. When he bumps into a girl, she apologizes. She realizes that Saito is the familiar that Louise recently summoned. He asks to know if he is a nobleman. Saito doesn't understand about nobles and commoners. The girl explains that nobles can use magic. At this moment, Saito doesn't know if he can use magic or not, but she notices that he is a commoner like her, then introduces herself as Siesta. The stallion asks him to deliver his food soon. Saito wants to take it to the boy so he can get revenge on him. When giving it to the boy's girlfriend heard some rumors that he was dating a first-year girl, responding that he would never do something like that. Saito says it's true, he's a dog, asking to know what Saito is talking about. He asks him not to call Saito, he's just crazy. When he looks to the side, he notices that the girl from last night is heading towards him, so he takes her and leaves the place. The girl asks to see if she saw a blonde boy, then points at him and says that he is sneaking out. Trying to get out of this situation fails, and everyone realizes that the two are fighting. Saito says he's dating two girls at the same time, so they both get irritated. Then he ends up getting slapped in the face and falling to the ground. Guichet, he fell to the ground, and everyone he is laughing at the same thing. Guichet realizes that Saito has no manners against a noble. But unfortunately, in Saito's world, this type of education does not exist. Guichet decides to challenge Saito to a duel. For a person of the stature of a commoner, who is also a relative, who disgraced himself, and what's more, he made two maidens cry. Saito remembered that they just didn't cry, but they were also very angry. Suddenly, Louise appears at the scene, pulling Saito by the arm, then asks him to apologize before it's too late. Saito, you will never be able to surpass a noble. The scene changes to the teacher. The director remembers that there was no history of a commoner becoming a family member, but the teacher explains that this is not the problem. The brand that appeared in Saito is something I hadn't known about, but after some research, it corresponded with what is in the book. When looking at her subordinate's face, she understood the message, and the scene returns to Saito, who will begin the fight against Guichet. Guichet summons a knight and punches the boy in the stomach. Saito ends up falling to the ground. Louise tells Saito again that he can't beat a nobleman. That's impossible. Even so, Saito will not give up at all. He was caught off guard, and now the fight will be even. Saito will never give up. She doesn't care if he's a wizard. Returning to the director, he explains that this is the mark of a family member that only existed in legends. I would never have imagined that the third daughter of the Valliere family would invoke such a thing. This could affect one of the missing ends of the Pentagon. Even if it's true, you don't want me to let this slip to anyone. After a while, Saito is in a deplorable state. His master asks the boy to stop being humiliated like this. Still, Saito doesn't care about it. Guichet. He feels sorry and decides to give the boy a sword so he can defend himself. Louise asks him not to do this if he does. Guichet, he will not hold back and will attack with everything. Saito, he doesn't care anymore. He can't go back to his world. The only thing he needs to have is honor. When attacked, Saito manages to break the beast very easily, and everyone starts rooting for Saito. Suddenly a light appears in the boy's hand, and after that he goes out defeating all of the soldiers. Guichet. When he knocks him to the ground, he gives up, and Saito emerges as the winner. The girls are all pissing Guarana over the same thing, and Guichet is sad for having lost to a commoner. Louise asks to see if everything is okay with the boy. Answering yes, he releases the sword, and the mark stops shining, thus ending up falling to the ground. Upon waking up after 3 days, the maid appears at the place. Louise had asked her to take care of the boy, so that she could get some rest. Since he passed out, she hasn't left his side for a minute. The next day, Saito thanks the girl for taking care of him, but she doesn't care about that. She just wants him to wash her panties again and keep quiet. While walking around the school, Saito finally managed to understand why everyone calls the girl Zero Louise. Makes sense. Always thought it sounded weird. After leaving the room, they both walk around the school, and Saito sings the new song they made for the girl, but she doesn't like it at all and goes on a hunger strike for the same thing. Saito begs for food. Deciding to make an exception, he ends up singing again, and she gets very angry and goes on another hunger strike. When he was kicked out of his room, his friend suddenly appeared there and took him to the kitchen so he could eat. After taking the belly out of misery, everyone praises the boy for being their savior. He managed to defeat the arrogant nobleman with his sword, and it was something magnificent. Saito thinks it wasn't a big deal, but they all think he's even cooler, because he's not bragging about defeating a nobleman. After eating, leave the kitchen with your friend. She explains to the boy that he was in a deplorable situation. Mrs. Louise bought some very expensive medicine, and after that, Saito started to get better. Even so, Saito wasn't very emotional. But the girl would like to talk to him more another time. Saito, you need to go back as soon as possible because of your master. Suddenly, he ends up being caught by the salamander and being taken to Kirsch's room. I'm just in that suit. She confesses to him because she is completely in love with him. When he was about to kiss him, suddenly one of the girl's boyfriends appears and is very angry with Saito. Saito doesn't understand how he managed to climb to the third floor like that. Kirsha activates the flames and throws it at the boy so that he falls from the third floor and leaves the two alone. Suddenly another boy appears. He wants to know why he is with someone else, since they had a night like that. Shooting another one, he says he's just another friend. Just as he was about to enjoy the night, 3 more guys showed up to try to break up their party. So Flame ends up defeating them all with ease. Even so, she doesn't care and kisses him on the mouth. When you least expect it, Louise appears at the scene and sees the two making out. She asks to know why she is attacking her family member, but she can't do anything. Love is fire is the von Zerbst's destiny. It's instinct to embrace love. Louise just wants him to go back to his room and won't say twice. Kirsha doesn't want him to go, even though he's familiar. He's still human. Going after the boy, he grabs him with his watermelons and asks him if he's enjoying it. Louise gets jealous and says that if she doesn't go with her, more than 10 nobles will come to the boy. Hypnotizing the boy with his eyes soon becomes quite enchanted. Having understood, leave the place immediately with Saito and ask to see if he is in heat, apologizing for thinking you're going to get beaten up. As he passes by the boy, he grabs a whip so he can end Saito's race. He had so many women to shake his tail, but he went straight to Zerbst. Hitting the boy, he asked to know what good he saw in the girl. Saito explains that he never climbed into Louise's bed, so he climbed into Zerbst's bed. Asking to find out if he's jealous, he ends up receiving a judo blow to his soft parts and goes into a vegetative state. The girl doesn't care what he does or doesn't do. She doesn't want him to do it to the girl because the Zerbst family and Valier are sworn enemies. Asking to see if he understood, Saito is grounded for a long time. Explaining to the girl what happened, he explains that he was caught by the girl's salamander. Louise finds this pathetic because the boy is a knight and lost to a salamander in a very humiliating way. But she doesn't understand how Saito fought the ticket office in such a sudden way. Saito, you have no idea. As soon as he picked up the sword, his body began to move on its own. The girl remembers that when you hire a family member, they gain a special ability. But she asks the boy to go to sleep as soon as possible. She needs him to wake up early tomorrow. Saito decides to go sleep outside. Louise allows him to stay inside. If he goes outside, Zerbst will attack him. Saito asks to know if he has feelings for her. Getting angry, she beats the boy all night. But it was all just a joke. But she doesn't want to know. At dawn, Zerbst prepared himself to seduce Saito. Seeing the two of them through the window, I need to go out and look for the boy. Asking her friend to call her family member, they both go together so they can find Saito. Asking to see if they know where they are going. Zerbst left in a hurry and doesn't remember which way they went. About that, Saito and Louise are walking through the capital. When entering a store so he can buy a sword for Saito, she asks the price of the best sword. The man is excited because he's going to pass a nobleman behind. When he brings it, he says the price and the girl gets scared. With that amount, she can even buy a house. Asking to find out which sword is the cheapest in the store. He gives some scrap to the boy who gets angry for giving him trash like that. But he soon remembers that she bought a very expensive medicine, which is why she was unable to buy a decent sword for it. Meanwhile, Zerbst keeps looking at the two of them walking together. But she doesn't know how she's going to attract Saito. The girl appears in Saito's room, proclaiming that she had bought the best sword in the store for the boy, asking to know how she bought it. She only has money to buy it. She is not a bankrupt person with Louise. But that's not exactly what happened. Zerbst used security tricks to get a nice discount on the purchase of the weapon. When both were about to fight, Zerbst's friend takes the wands so they don't destroy everything. Suddenly, Saito's gun started talking to itself and called them both idiots. Getting angry, he thought it was Saito who had spoken, but it wasn't him. But in reality, it was the boy's gun. He asked them both to be quiet because it is disturbing their sleep. Saito decides that he will keep the other weapon and introduces himself to Saito as Derfringer. Louise asks to know why these strange things only happen to her. The next day, the school director ends up receiving a message from one of the people from the Empire. When leaving the place, he calls the director's right-hand man to leave. Agreeing, he asks to know what he was doing there. The man explains that they think there is a thief in the city, so they sent a mission to them. He steals treasures from nobles using magic. Recently, he has been the subject of numerous rumors. The scene changes to Saito walking after washing clothes. When passing in front of Zerbst's room, she takes the boy into her room so she can do some dirty things. When saying that the boy is a slob, Saito decides to leave the room because he was upset. Trying to convince the boy with some items so he can stay by his side, Saito doesn't want to accept it. By taking the boy to the ground, suddenly Louise appears at the scene calling to come back, agreeing instantly. She can't believe Saito fell for Zerbst's trick again. but the boy remembers that he would win the sword that was very expensive to the girl. Louise remembers the boy who had given Saito a sword to use. Soon after, Saito ends up being beaten again by the girl and leaves with a sore bottom. The next day, Louise no longer allows Saito to enter the classroom. Because the boy spends all the time looking at the girl's skirts, he also always sleeps while people try to study, and the boy's snoring sounds like Shrek. Accepting without saying much, they stay with their families. Suddenly, the cook appears calling him to go to the kitchen so he can eat some. Asking to know where Siesta is, the man responds that she doesn't work in the kitchen and that she isn't there all the time. But it's not quite like that. The man explains that she no longer serves at the school. Now she will serve a nobleman named Count Mott. A carriage went to the school to pick up the girl, and having nothing to do, he decided to go. Asking to see if he was joking, he didn't understand why he did it so suddenly. The man explains that in the end, the commoners have to do whatever the nobles want. But now the man needs to get back to work. Saito doesn't understand why she didn't say anything about leaving. When asking Louise who this man Count Moot is, she explains that a messenger from the Empire appears at school from time to time. He is very arrogant, which is why almost no one likes him. Saito doesn't understand why Siesta went to the man's house, but the sword explains that when a noble specifically calls a young lady, it is normal for them to become lovers. Saito, keep that in mind. Soon afterwards, Saito goes out to ask the guichet where Mott's mansion is. When talking to the boy, he decides to go to the mansion. The scene switches to Louise, asking to know where Saito is. Suddenly Zerbst appears at the scene, who is going to give the boy some food, but he is not there. The scene changes to Saito, who managed to reach the mansion. But when he least expects it, a guard appears at his side asking to know why he is in front of the noble's house. Mott. About that, Moot is giving orders above Siesta, but when he least expects it, Saito appears on the scene. The man will give Saito the opportunity to talk to him a little. The boy asks him to release Siesta. In return, he will do whatever he wants. But the man doesn't understand why he's doing all this for someone he barely knows. The man always wanted to have the girl as his lover. For a nameless commoner to serve a noble palace like his is a great honor for them. Soon after, Saito ends up speaking with a slightly louder tone, and the man ends up not liking it. But he wants to make a deal with Saito. He wants a book that was accidentally summoned when a certain wizard was experimenting with magic. It seems that the treasure is in the possession of a renowned family from Germania. Returning home, he finds Louise halfway. Picking up a ride for the girl, he explains that in order to save his friend, he needs Zerbst's license. When talking to her friend, she doesn't allow it, so she decides to go to sleep and go save her friend in the dead of night. Arriving in her friend's room, she offers the book to the boy. But first, she would like her to do those little things with her. Getting angry, she says that nobles are all the same. At dawn, Saito leaves so he can save Siesta. Upon arriving at the man's mansion, he ends up being caught by the soldiers. The man asking to know if he brought what was promised. Saying no, he takes his sword, but he notices that there is something strange. He cannot feel the immense sensation he had before when he picked up the sword. Being thrown away, he is close to being eliminated, but Louise appears to stop the blow. They talk to each other, but the man notices that the student's level has dropped a lot. Zerbst, give the man the book that was summoned from the other world. But in reality, it's only plus 18 manga, and Saito thought it was something important. But before he finishes, Saito wants him to hand over the girl. Upon arriving home, Siesta gives the boy a kiss and runs out of the place. Thanking Louise for her help, she wants him to still shut up. You're thinking about how heavy the punishment might be. Saito wants her to have mercy, but there is no way she will do it, and this time the punishment will be even more severe than before. At dusk, someone's treasure ended up being stolen by a woman. The scene changes to Saito, where he ends up being beaten for being a very perverted person. Apologizing, she wants Saito to show the fighting style he showed before again. But the boy can't do that. He tried inside the nobleman's house and couldn't show his skills. Seeing that he can't do it, Saito thinks it was just luck, remembering what happened to Mott. The girl finds it very strange. For a family to do such a thing, there should be some kind of punishment for her. In any case, there's no time for that anymore. He wants you to think of something you can do by the end of your class. Upon leaving the room, Saito is training, but some people think it's just a weird dance. When he least expects it, Siesta appears at the scene, asking to know if he is training for the evaluation fair. Even so, Henrietta will be present. She explains that Henrietta has been an icon for the citizens since the Majesty gave up the throne. But everyone is very busy because of the man's presence. Still, she wants Saito to do his best. At nightfall, some people are realizing that there is no way to steal the item inside that door. Little does the man know that he has already been robbed. The next day, Henrietta finally arrived at the castle and was acclaimed by everyone. Louise looks at the girl with a look of admiration, and Saito notices this. The director asks why the princess is at school, but she has a good reason to see this year's students. The The scene changes to Saito and Louise, who are in the room. Saito cannot learn everything in one day. But when you least expect it, someone ends up knocking on the door. When it opens, a person invades the room and Louise goes into shock. But it was just Henrietta, who went just to see Louise. She appeared very suddenly because she wanted to vent to someone. Since his father passed away, he has had no one to open his heart to. Louise was surprised when she received the letter. Now Saito understands why. He did the same training because the princess would appear in his room. Louise hits the boy and asks him to shut up. I wanted to know what kind of person this family member is to have challenged a noble. But she wants you not to worry. There was a certain commotion in the court, but there was no further repercussion. Henrietta always said that when Louise got into trouble, she would show up to help her. And now the princess can help the girl however she wants. Plus, she has an incredible family member. When leaving the place, he wants Saito to do his best tomorrow, being all full of himself, and he's ready. Louise gets angry and starts hitting the boy because he is too convinced. When turning your back, as the princess always thought, living freely is the best treasure. Finally, the day of the festival arrived. Several people made their presentations, but Saito's was nothing special because he has no power and ended up being pulled. The scene changes to a woman who is about to steal what is in the room, but he realizes that he has very powerful magic and doesn't have much to do, so he decides to use his magic to summon a golem. Saito and Louise were passing by the place when they saw the beast. It attacked them both, and Saito got in front so that Louise wouldn't suffer any blows. When launching a blow against the golem, Louise ended up missing a 40-meter creature. Amul doesn't understand how she missed the fireball magic, but she is scared because the girl's strength is very great. A simple magic can't do that damage. The golem punches where Louise punched. Several people heard a tremendous crash. Soon after, he releases Saito, and one of the girls picks him up so he doesn't get hurt. After stealing what you wanted, leave the place immediately. The scene changes to the director, who is seeing what happened, but no one has been able to find the trace of the thief. All they found was a mountain of dust. Of all places, she was right to break the wall of the treasure room. No one understands how she knew it was there. Meanwhile, the students are talking to each other. They think they must be a very strong person of a level triangular. Saito anyway, everyone is safe. That's what matters. Suddenly, Henrietta appears at the scene. Louise apologizes for not being able to defend the rain's treasure. But she asks Louise to raise her head. That was not her responsibility. She must report what happened to the royal court. They will meet in the near future. Returning to the castle, Louise hopes that the princess will not be held responsible for this. Saito doesn't understand what's happening. But the thief who was at the scene took advantage of this opportunity. Louise knows that recently, she heard a not-so-pleasant rumor about the royal court. Even so, your worry doesn't solve anything. Saito wants to ask the girl something. When he was caught, I would like to know why she didn't run away. But she says that a wizard who abandons his familiar should not be called a wizard. The next day, Zerbst she is feeding Saito in her little mouth. The boy is completely in love with her. Upon seeing this, Louise gets angry and beats the boy up. Zerbst asks him not to do that. He doesn't want to study, and he doesn't even have the time to do so thanks to the commotion that happened at school. But it became known that Henrietta will be held responsible for what happened. Fouquet broke in because security was low and all the guards were with Henrietta. Furthermore, due to the resistance of her nobles, the princess made the decision to remain supervised. Soon after, the teacher asked Louise and Tabitha to go to the principal's office immediately, by calling the three to the location, deciding to all go to the capital together. Tabitha is only going to go along because she is worried about the two girls. The director will leave it to the three of them then. They both testified to Fouquet. Altogether said, Miss Tabitha, at that age, earned the title of knight. Furthermore, Zerbst is from an exceptional Germanic family with great military personnel. Heard that she wields powerful fire magic like no one else. Louise can't talk much at home. She is the third daughter of the Valliere family, who brought excellent wizards to the school. Not being able to praise the girl, he heard that the girl's swordsmanship is extraordinary, and that he even defeated General Gramont's son, Guichet de Gramont. Furthermore, he is the legendary Ganda. In disguise, the green-haired girl stares at the Fabem's bald head. The Magic Academy counts on your efforts and your duties as a noble. Longueville decides to accompany the girls on this trip. I intended to do this from the beginning. The woman explains that not all wizards are noble. For various reasons, many lose their title of nobility and gain the title of commoner. Among these people, some became mercenaries and others, criminals. Even she lost her title of noble. Zerbst, remember that the girl is old Osmond's secretary. But the girl explains that the man doesn't care about the social level of people who are commoners, the nobles. Zerbst wants to know why she lost, not meaning. The girl doesn't understand why she's there after a simple thief. Louise asks to know why she didn't stay in the city since she finds it so tiring. But she only went to be with her beloved Saito. Then she approaches and offers the sword. Saito thinks Louise won't allow it, but she doesn't care. Picking up the sword, Louise is biting herself in rage and finally arrive in the promised place. Saito went alone and the girls stayed in the bushes to observe everything around them. Realizing that there is no one, Tabitha can see that there is no magic, and everyone is impressed by the girl's power. 3 people will enter. Louise will stay outside, while the woman goes into the woods to look for a clue. Looking everywhere, he thinks there is nothing. But Tabitha manages to find the Staff of Destruction. Suddenly, the golem appears again, and Saito hears Louise screaming and running out to see what is happening. Louise tries to throw something at the golem, which still has no effect on the beast. Saito asks her not to do that. She gets stressed because using magic doesn't mean the person is a noble. Those who don't turn their backs on their enemies are noble. She no longer wants to be called Zero Louise in her entire life. Shooting at the beast has no effect. Close to being eliminated, Saito jumps in front and slaps the girl in the face. Saito is stressed because the girl's nobility is worthless. Starting to cry, Louise is tired of always being the center of laughter for people in her class. She can no longer take so much humiliation. She knows that if she runs away, people will make fun of her again. Saito grabs the girl and runs away from the place. Then the 2 girls show up at the scene so they can take the 2 back home. Placing Louise on top of the dragon, he asks them to go quickly, as there won't be time to get on the dragon. Dodging the blow, Saito needs to find a way to defeat this creature. Starting at the beast, he uses his sword, but ends up breaking it in half. The scrap asks for it to be used. If you don't do this, it will end up being eliminated. When he picks up the sword, he feels again the way he fought against Guichet. Dodging several blows from the beast, everyone is impressed because Saito is much faster than before. Seeing that he is in trouble, he jumps off the dragon so he can help Saito, unable to use what he has at hand. Saito runs out and takes the girl's hand, using the cannon to defeat the beast. Suddenly, the woman appears at the scene, revealing herself to be the great thief. She brought some students to the site to help her use this equipment, but she never thought that Louise's family member would be able to use it. Trying to use it again, she realized that it doesn't fire, so Saito goes up and hits the girl in the stomach and falls to the ground. Saito explains that he can only fire 1 shot at a time with this weapon. This is a weapon from your world. With that, they finish the job. Zerbst is increasingly in love with Saito. Upon arriving at school again, the man explains that Fouquet is in the custody of the guards, and the Staff of Destruction has been sealed again in the treasure room. Everything is under control thanks to them who did a great job. You are invited to tonight's gala. The incident was well considered in court. The 3 will receive a reward from the royal court. Saito wants to ask something. The boy explains that the weapon is something from his world. He doesn't understand how it ended up on this earth. He explains that the Staff of Destruction is a souvenir of a certain man. That was 30 years ago. He saved his life, but he was dressed in clothes never seen in this world. This man was seriously injured. He brought him to the gym and treated his injuries, but he ended up passing away. In the end, he cannot find out who he was or where he came from. This man who brought this weapon then buried it with him. The other presented the court. Saito is angry because he couldn't find out anything about his world. The scene changes to Saito, who is quiet at the party because he hasn't found any clues to return to his world. Soon after, Louise appears in a stunning way, enchanting everyone and being asked to return. However, she wants to dance with Saito. Dancing, she is now sure that Saito is part of another world, asking to know if he wants to return home. Answering yes, Louise is very sad. But I would like to know why Saito saved her. But the answer is simple, because he is the girl's family member. The sword is surprised, as it is the first time it has seen its familiar match its master in this way. The next day, Louise meets with Saito. The girl is very happy to have won the title of knight given by the court. This is a lot for the girl. The princess doesn't want me to say that. She did a worthy mission to earn this title. He captured the thief who tormented the castle. Furthermore, he also thanks Saito for his help. She wants him to continue taking care of her precious friend. I extend my hand. He wants to kiss her to swear loyalty. Saito doesn't understand. Louise explains that he needs to kiss her. Misunderstanding, he kisses the princess on the mouth and she ends up fainting. Getting angry, she beat the boy. The princess asks them to calm down. She would like to give them something to do. They would like them both to die for a while in their city. The scene changes to Louise, who is forced to dress as a commoner. Finding it too simple, Saito remembers that she was told to dress as a commoner, and that she needs this outfit to disguise herself. She receives a social class certificate that the royal court sent. Both need to carry out surveillance around the city. Recently, he heard rumors of nobles' oppression of commoners. When he asked his advisors, they said that the nobles are setting examples for the commoners, but there's no way this is happening to them. But when he remembered that matter about Count Mott, he doesn't think it's a rumor. It's because I would like the 2 of them to investigate this matter in the city secretly. This will be a very difficult task. Without even exit, Louise accepts. Walking together through the city, Louise is angry because she can't rent a horse with the money she received, much less get a good hotel room. Louise doesn't want it to get that bad, so she's going to fend for herself. At nightfall, Saito finds the girl and discovers that she lost all her money in the city's casino. Saito knew he shouldn't have left the girl alone, being stressed, asks her to be quiet and help her think about what they should do now. The boy thinks he can't do anything unless she asks the princess for money. Suddenly, a man appears at the place, offering the two a service. Having nothing to do, he decides to accept. Soon after, both are forced to work so they have a place to stay. Louise is having a lot of difficulty talking to the men. Suddenly, a nobleman appears, asking everyone to leave the place to be alone. This man takes advantage of girls, but with Louise it's different. When he tries to touch the girl, she takes out her wand and attacks the man, showing that she is an official of the royal court. So he gives the girl money to forget what happened there. Running out, the man doesn't want the girls to talk about each other's personal problems. The scene changes to the girl who is trapped, but a man appears asking you to complete your mission. When she returns home, Louise asks her not to catch her in strange places, but she asks him not to do that. However, Saito doesn't feel anything, getting angry, knocking the boy off the horse, because there are few people at school since summer vacation has arrived. The boy ends up meeting Zerbst and Tabitha, who are going to her house so they can have some fun. Soon after, Saito is forced to wash his clothes and clean his room. When leaving the place, she doesn't understand why she is so angry that the boy is flirting with other people. After washing the girl's clothes, he finds a pan and asks if she can use it at night. The man admires Saito a lot and allows him to take it without asking him. The scene changes to the two travelers. Zerbst is impressed and doesn't know that Tabitha was part of the royal family of Gallia. When he arrives home, he is greeted at the door, and everyone calls her Charlotte. Asking to see if he can see the girl's father soon, he says no and decides to go. Suddenly, the butler appears giving himself tea and is impressed that Charlotte has brought a friend home. Zerbst doesn't understand why this is a surprise. Upon entering the room, the girl finds her mother thin and staring into space. Talking to her mother, she wants Charlotte to leave her room. She is scared because she thinks Charlotte is part of the royal family. Do you think she wants to steal yours? Charlotte, her. Just as she did with her husband. She doesn't want to see people from the empire. She won't let her doll touch Charlotte again, which she thinks is her daughter. He wants you to leave your room as soon as possible. Zerbst doesn't understand why she changed her name. The man explains that the desire to study abroad came from the girl's uncle, the king. Charlotte's father, the late Duke of Orleans, was the younger brother of the current king. But the man ended up being murdered. He's going to tell you why he trusts Zerbst. He'll tell her because she's a close friend of Charlotte's. The Duke of Orleans was the second son of the royal family. He was very skilled with magic, more so than his older brother Joseph. Other than that, he was very popular and talented as well. When the king died 6 years ago, the imperial court was divided to decide who would inherit the throne. In that horrible battle, the Duke of Orleans was murdered. Those who put Joseph on the throne also targeted Charlotte to prevent future problems. One night, the lady and the lady were invited to a gala dinner. A man put a spell on his daughter's glass. Seeing the evil, he took it so that he wouldn't do that to the girl. Then, she lost her sanity. This act became public, and the entire noble family was condemned. You sacrificed yourself to protect your daughter. Since then, the lady has been in a vegetative state. Tabitha is the name of the doll that the lady gave to Charlotte as a gift. Since then, Charlotte, who is usually very happy and energetic, has become a different person. It even seems like she sealed all her emotions and words. When the lady's incident became public, those who wanted to get rid of Miss Charlotte disappeared. In exchange for this, the royal family gave her a mission that would be almost impossible to complete under the excuse that her skill was sufficient. But you managed to complete this aimless mission you were given. She must protect herself, even at the cost of her own life. The girl understands that this is the reason she studies abroad, at Tristane's Academy. The man ends by saying that the royal family could not do what they wanted, even though it was a feat for her intellectual understanding. They gave him the title of Chevalier. They treated her as if she were a nuisance, sending her to a foreign country. Suddenly the girl appears at the place, then invites her to take a shower together. The scene returns to Saito, who is taking a bath alone. Suddenly Siesta appears at the scene. Seeing the boy taking a bath, she would also like to do that. Saito jokes that if you want, just come in. Being happy, he enters without fear, and Saito is quite embarrassed, asking to find out what the boy's land is like. Saito explains that there are no wizards, and there is only one moon. She gets angry, thinking she is making fun of him. Meanwhile, the crazy couple is on a date, where the girl wants to put a passion potion so that he falls in love with her. However, Louise appears at the scene going after Saito, but he ends up finding the boy in a bathtub next to Siesta. This was enough for her to become shaken and run away from the scene. Meanwhile, Siesta explains her great-grandfather's story. He said that he lived in another world and that he came from heaven. But she leaves suddenly because it's time to go back to work. She is very grateful for the bath. But the best thing was Saito, then leaving the place dying of embarrassment. The scene changes to Louise, who is very jealous. When he finds the crazy couple, he drinks the drink she put in the love potion. Upon entering her room, she blushes and declares herself to Saito. Suddenly, the girl appears to explain to Saito what is happening. The scene changes to Zerbst, who is looking at Charlotte as she sleeps, but remembers the man's words that she is like this today because of the people who were against her family. Charlotte was given a mission, even though she doesn't want Zerbst to go. After hearing the girl's story from the man, in the middle of the night, she ends up having a nightmare about people putting a drink in her mother's glass. Zerbst lies in bed and hugs her so she won't be scared anymore. She explains that this can last for a month or even a year. Even if you get angry, there's not much you can do. Meanwhile, she is in love with the boy. Suddenly, Siesta appears at the scene, seeing that the two are in love. Saito tries to explain that she saw everything wrong. Louise is sad because the boy doesn't love her and runs away from the place. Not knowing who to go to first, he decides to talk to Siesta, but she doesn't need to explain it to her. She's not worried about that. Besides, there's nothing going on between them. Saito tries to explain that it's because of the love potion. Saito explains that last night she took it by mistake, and after that she's been acting that way. But she doesn't want you to keep making up lies like that. But the boy says no. But she doesn't care about that. She knows that the love potion is prohibited by law. Upon returning to his room, Saito thinks she must be very angry. But she is waiting for the boy in a bold way. She asks to know why he never goes after her. Even though he lives in the same room, he never takes the initiative to move forward a little, asking her to put on some clothes. He picks up the boy and takes him to bed, and he passes out. He felt alone all this time when they weren't together. Saito decides to go after it to reverse the situation. Walking with his sword, he doesn't understand why he's after it. Better to be loved than to be beaten all the time. But Saito doesn't care about that. He just wants her to return to normal. When going to talk to the girl, I would like her to make a potion to reverse the effect. She explains that it is difficult. Even if Saito says, it is difficult to get a portion of the Holy Spirit's tears. Saito, remember that this is prohibited by law, so go call the teacher. She asks him not to do that. She will go with him tomorrow morning to collect the tears. The next day they all go to the lake together. Guichet, he decides to go ahead and so he can find the woman who makes the contract. But he ended up falling into the lake because he didn't look ahead. When asking about the water spirit, the girl thinks she might be Brava because the water level is higher. It wasn't like that when you went with your father when you were a child. You will wait a little longer so that you can reduce the water a little more. She goes to the place until the sun sets. At dusk, she gives some of her blood to the frog to go to the sacred spirit. The girl explains that a long time ago she went to this place and made a contract with the sacred spirit. If the spirit remembers, it will appear at the location. Saito asks to know if he needs to make the spirit cry so he can catch the tear. But the girl replies that it is a small fragment of her body. But if they don't get the tears, they will be in danger. Suddenly a whirlpool of water appears in the area, and the girl begins to talk to the spirit. The girl asks you to give her the fragment, answering that no, she has no interest at all. Saito kneels and will do whatever she wants, remembering that Saito had said he would do anything. She is busy maintaining the water level, otherwise she won't be able to deal with the attackers. Some of her race are attacking her. You need to defeat them. Saito decides that he will accept doing this to have the fragment. Seeing that there is a house next door, Saito thinks that they must be wind wizards. They could have used an air bubble to reach the bottom of the lake. Suddenly, two wizards appear on the spot, casting a spell towards the sea. When going toward the magicians, the boy asks him to wait a little. If Saito is captured, they won't be able to win. Guiche. He says that if he lets a commoner fight alone, he denigrates his name as a noble. Guiche decides that he will get their attention using magic. Saito thinks he has the easy part. The boy replies that he is a friend, and Saito is a knight. Launching his blow against the two, he manages to block it easily. Saito goes up, but comes back because it is a very powerful spell against him. Combining their blows, the two defeat Saito. Suddenly, Louise appears at the scene, uses her scam and discovers that it is Charlotte and Zerbst. When it happens to them that they gave a love potion, they don't understand why they did something as dangerous as a love potion. They both need to defeat this woman. Saito decides to ask why she is making the water rise. When summoning the girl, she explains that someone from the human race stole something from him. It can only exist with an eagle. So, if you fill the world with water, you will get your treasure back. Saito decides that he will take the girl's treasure back so that she can calm down and not do this. The girl has already heard about it and if she's not mistaken, it's a magical item that gives a false life to the dead. Everyone thinks it's better to give up. He won't believe a human who appeared suddenly, but she believes in Saito. She explains that a Grandalfer, he always kept his promises. Then believe in Saito. Since she believes in the boy, Saito can take as long as he wants. Because she is immortal, it can take a few years. Then ask her to lower the water level. Upon returning to normal, Louise becomes angry again and decides to end Saito's race. Suddenly a person appears through the window, and they both notice that it is the princess. The scene changes to the same man with the bandit from before, asking to find out why she is at both their houses. She explains that she went to the place to ask a favor for both of them. She decided to marry a member of the royal family from Germany, asking to know the reason for this. Of all people, why with the barbarians? But she can't do anything. But to protect your small country, Tristain needs to establish an alliance with Germany. Saito realizes that it is just an arranged marriage. Louise asks him to be quiet. Even if this is for the country, she thinks it's a shame. She explains that the Princess of Tristain doesn't think it's unfortunate to sacrifice herself for her country. But there is one thing you must do first. Louise asks to find out if she can do it. Thanking the girl, he wants to ask her something. The girl says it's a letter she sent to the Prince Wales from the Kingdom of Albion. If the public finds out about this letter, the alliance could be at risk. Heard that the nobles are rebelling, and even now the royal family is under threats. But she apologized for that. I would like to ask both of them, because they are her friends. But now, the people who can count on it are the two of them. Suddenly, a person appears at the scene. Guichet introduces himself to the princess, who heard the entire conversation between them. He wants you to allow him to help with this mission, asking to find out if there is anything with the Admiral Greymont. He responds that he is the son of man. When leaving the place to wash the girl's clothes, suddenly Seista appears at the scene so he can apologize to Saito. But he doesn't care about that. He wants to know if she knows of someone who knows history at school. When talking to the baldest man in the world, Saito asks to know about Grandalfer. The man explains that Grandalfer is a familiar that belongs to a legendary void mage, the magic of the vacuum. But until now, the magic of the vacuum element has never been seen. The mark that appeared on the back of his hand is very similar to the one on the Grandalfer. But since a vacuum mage doesn't exist, he has no proof that Saito is one. Grandalfer. The scene returns to Louise. When you can use magic correctly, being on a mission as important as this, you don't even know if you can accomplish it. Saito, take the girl. She asks her not to worry so she won't get anywhere. They manage to overcome it until now. Even so, if something happens, Saito will protect the girl. But she knows that this is the least a family member should do. The next day, a little more about the past is shown. Give the girl a ring so she can be protected. He called someone to escort them. He wants them to ask him to guide them to Albion. Upon arriving at the location, Louise thought that the person who would escort them would appear at the location a long time ago. Suddenly a tap appears at the location. The man introduces himself as Ward, captain of the Griffin Squadron. Princess Henrietta asked me to accompany them. He is the famous magic knight. The man goes to Louise and picks the girl up, apologizes for his rudeness. He had no idea that his fiancée was being attacked. When going to the location, Guichet explains that the elite of elites is even more shameful that the captain of the Griffin Squadron escorting them. Louise, you were surprised because you didn't know Ward was going to escort you into town. The man explains that they cannot use the Griffin Squad for a secret mission, but when he heard about the incident from the princess's letter, he wanted the honor of escorting him. The man went to the place after hearing Louise's name that she was going to the city. Being embarrassed, she looks at Saito, who doesn't care about anything. As they continue walking, Ward finds a good opportunity for them to get closer. I agree. Look to the side and notice that Saito is talking to Guichet. Arriving in a city that is made only of stone, they decide that they will stay there for the night and leave the next day. Louise explains to Saito that he is her fiancé thanks to her family. Saito, don't care about anything. The man is vain, but he is the most sincere nobleman you have ever seen. He's a good person. Louise has admired this man since she was a child. He lost his parents very early and faced several difficulties until he became captain of the Magic Knights, different from a person giving hints to Saito. That's why Saito doesn't see any point in tagging along or anything like that. Louise, she's angry, because the boy is a relative, your family member. It's a natural thing to go with Saito, then leave the place angry. Saito doesn't understand what's happening. The sword asks them to find out if he's in love with Louise. Saito, it's not. She's violent and selfish, apart from her personality, which is very distorted. Even so, Saito remembers that he should have said something nice that would have protected the girl. That's just why. The man praises Saito for being a strong boy. In fact, the man has an interest in Saito. I would love to battle Saito. The ship will leave tomorrow night. It will be boring to wait and do nothing. He doesn't care about that. It's fine with him. But she wants you to stop saying those things. Now is not the time to do something like that. But he doesn't want you to worry, of course he's going to take it easy. So you think it's best to go to your room as soon as possible because you're leaving early tomorrow. So he wants Louise to accompany him. But she doesn't want to go because they aren't married yet. Ward explains that she is his fiancée, so she has nothing to worry about. The man needs to say something extremely important to Louise. Meanwhile, the bandit is listening to everything that is happening. Upon entering the room, Guichet, she thinks it's a horrible night because she has to spend it in the same room as a man. But he remembers that he saw a young maiden. Saito asked to know what a Grandalfer. The man explains that his partner for 6,000 years and even now were Gandalf. Saito remembered that he bought the item for nothing from a weapons store. That would be too much of a coincidence. But for him there is no coincidence in this world. Saito is his partner. That's why they are there. Saito doesn't understand why he didn't say it. But he never asked anything. So there's no reason to answer anything. Saito explains that an ability to use any weapon freely. But the man wants to warn the boy, only things that were made to be weapons. That's why the shiny decorative sword means nothing. Saito, I would like to know if using it can beat Ward. But that doesn't depend on him, it depends on Saito. It was born just to be handled. The scene switches to Louise. The man explains that he always bought magic from Louise's sisters and ran onto a little boat. But even so, you feel that the aura that radio in the girl is one that no one has. She possesses a power that is characteristic of her alone. But she knows she doesn't have it. So far, she can't use magic. But when the mission is over, they will get married. He explains that he has no intention of staying as captain of the Magic Knights. In fact, he wants to be a nobleman who moves all countries, not all of Halkaginia. Louise doesn't understand why he needs to marry her. But the man really needs it. And that person can only be her, and no one else. When he would kiss the girl, he says he will always protect her. But he ends up calling for Saito. The man notices that the girl's heart already belongs to another man. Even though I say no. Ward, don't wait for her answer now. Asking you to wait a little. He explains that at the end of this journey, he is sure that Louise's heart will reach him. Meanwhile, the two wizards are watching everything, and you can tell it's the half-assed thief and Ward. The next day, Saito won't attack the boy. Going forward, Ward dodges all the blows, counterattacking. Saito jumps back to avoid receiving the blow. Returning to fight him, he realizes that Saito is nothing more than a point guard, full of openings. Going after Saito, he is cornered. Activating its wind strike, the sword asks for caution, but ends up being thrown away. The man explains that with these skills, he will not be able to defeat a real wizard. In short, Saito won't be able to protect Louise with this mediocre power. Upon meeting Saito, Louise asks why he is crying. There is no way he can beat a man who has been fighting for a long time. Saito replies that he's not crying because of it, just that he can't go home. But she's sure he's crying about losing, asking him to protect her. He won't do that. Seeing that he is being quite ignorant, he decides that he will marry Ward, and Saito goes into shock. Upon meeting the man, Louise asks to know where Saito and Guichet. The man responds that they have already left, so he and Louise they go finish the mission alone. Meanwhile, Saito is fighting Fouquet, asking to know the reason why she is there. But she was just to thank Saito for putting her in prison. Attacking the boy, Saito manages to cut off the beast's arm. Even so, it manages to regenerate soon after. Guiche tries to help, but ends up being easily defeated. When you least expect it, Zerbst and Charlotte appear to help Saito. But some people also appear to get in the way. So she decides to leave the place because she had already done what she wanted, delaying the staff. Saito gets confused, going to look for Louise, realizing that she went on the flying ship. Calling out to her, the girl thinks she hears Saito's voice, but the man replies that it was just something in the girl's imagination. Soon after, Louise decides to accept Ward's marriage proposal. The scene cuts back to Saito, where he heard that the girl had delayed them all. In the boy's mind, he thinks they should be together, but he can't say anything. But he's sure that Louise is in danger. The boy realizes that he doesn't have much to do, unless he waits until tomorrow morning. Suddenly, the family member Guichet appears at the location. The scene returns to Louise, who is talking to the man. He asks to know where the prince is Wales. Louise remembers that she can't talk about this to anyone until she arrives in Albion. He gets a little angry, but ends up understanding that this is part of the mission. You both still have a lot of time together. You think it's better to rest a little until tomorrow. Ward Untilu from the place. The girl knows that he is the man she always wanted. Even so, she is feeling a strong emptiness in her chest. Upon arriving at the promised location, Louise wants to know where the main thing is. But the man cannot say that. By showing the ring, he allows her to see it. And he explains that the Ring of Wind was passed down from generation to generation by the royal family of Albion. But he is the Prince of Albion, Wales' tutor. When talking to just the two of them, the princess had asked the man to seek political asylum. He gets angry because she read the letter and that's not allowed. He explains that this is nothing more than a battle between nobles and royalty, the name of an organization that is stirring up civil war. The nobles are nothing more than puppets. He is sad that he cannot identify them. He, as the prince of this country, needs to defend it even if it costs his life. Upon leaving the place, the man wants to marry Louise in that same place. She thinks it's impossible because it's so much on top of the girl. But he doesn't care. He needs to win back this country soon. Louise gets angry and won't marry a man. Suddenly a man appears who will not let the girl escape, as she is the great descendant of the void. When hypnotizing, the girl calls for Saito. As night falls, both are close to getting married. Close to saying I accept thanks to hypnosis, suddenly Saito appears at the scene to help the girl get out of hypnosis. The man ended up eliminating the prince soon after. He gives the ring to Louise before passing away. Saito is irritated that the man is playing with Louise's heart. In this world there is only her, shining more and more. Saito manages to transform the sword. Launching a blow against the boy, he manages to absorb it and throw it against the man. When you reach it, even so, you completed 2 of the 3 objectives. One was to eliminate the prince, and the other was to steal the letter. Setting the place on fire, since Louise isn't his, she doesn't belong to anyone anymore. The place starts to collapse, but luckily they are saved by their friends. Upon returning home, Saito realizes that Louise is sleeping, but he ends up crying, remembering Ward from his childhood. When returning to the current time of the anime, Saito kisses the girl on the mouth to seal his love for her. If he meets the princess, he apologizes for what happened. The letter was stolen and he was murdered right in front of him. It is entirely your responsibility for not having received the truth's Ward's intention, trembling with rage. The princess asks him to raise his head. The two begin to cry and the princess thanks her for giving her last words to her remembering. The scene returns to the director, where they found several false leads from the two. But this time the bald man says it's true. Suddenly Louise appears to talk. The director decides to give the man a few days off. Before talking, asked to find out why he took a vacation. The man responds that he found the legendary dragon. The last time he went looking for another legendary thing, it was found on the beach. In any case, the man doesn't expect any of this. But go listen to Louise's stories. When talking about the reconquest, the man realizes that this is going to cause a big problem for everyone. Louise wants to know about the Void descendant. Her memory is vague. The man explains that the Void is the legendary lost magical element. But he explains that Grandolpher, it's not a coincidence either. When you return to your room, you now know that Saito is a legendary familiar. This sounds absurd. Suddenly Saito appears at the scene. She is quite embarrassed. But the boy is acting natural after the kiss that happened. After being kicked out of the room, Saito finds Siesta and would like to know a little more about the girl's great-grandfather, who is from another world. She explains that he had a legendary dragon. One disappeared in the solar eclipse, and she heard that the other was the one her great-grandfather was riding. One of them disappeared, and the other fell in one place. Until now, it is stored somewhere as a family treasure. Saito asked me to take him to his village. Meanwhile, the boy's friends hear everything and are very interested in it. The scene changes to the girl. She can't stay mad at the boy because he always does so many good things for her. Thinking about apologizing to him, training because I've never apologized to anyone before. When he looks to the side, he notices that Saito is with the girl. Getting irritated, she asks one of the cooks, and she explains that the girl is coming home. The scene returns to Saito, who after a while arrived at the girl's house. She asks the follow he wants to show the boy to his family. Suddenly your friends stop at the place so they can find the treasure they are talking about. Upon entering the cave, Saito and his friends hear some noises, calling out to the person who is bald next to Louise. They went to the place looking for a relic. Saito and Louise are mad at each other. After walking for a long time, they find a plane that came from Saito's world. Now the man knows a way for Saito to return to his world. One returned and the other couldn't, so he stayed in the country. Saito, I always knew that Siesta was part of your world. The bald man believes that man missed the right time, so that he can return to the world, he needs to go at the right time. If Saito flies it towards the solar eclipse, he can return to his world. Louise goes into a state of shock because the boy wants to return to his world. When he manages to take it back to the school, the director will ask the royal court for approval to keep it at the school as an artifact for studies. Asking for some inventions from the bald man, Saito realizes that he has made gasoline. When sitting on the plane, he looks to the side and realizes that Louise he has a sad face. Walking away suddenly, he appears Guichet saying that he heard something that came from the city, that Albion changed its name to Reconquista, and declared war on Tristane. The scene changes to the man. The scene shifts to the men who conquered Albion. They explain that the commoners and nobles of Albion submit to excellence. All of this accomplished thanks to the magical power of the ring. They all note that it was worth taking the risk and stealing from the sacred water spirit. But this is just a step. He has the entire continent under his control. Now they will make the kingdom located in the center of the continent, Tristane, fall. They know that if they are going to invade with the proud troops of Albion, the Dragon Riders, Tristane won't even last long. The scene changes to Tristane's country, where people are angry that their enemy is a large country with several military ships in command of them. You only have two choices, but the princess thinks it's better to surrender. Losing your honor as a noble is the same as losing your lives. The princess decides that she will be in command of the army. The scene returns to Saito, who receives the news that the eclipse will appear again in 3 days. Soon after, all the nobles were gathered together. This appearing that a war between the Reconquista. When he returns to the room, he finds Saito sleeping and touches the boy. At dawn, she leaves a letter. When taking to Zerbst, put on to know what she thinks about the girl being gone. She thinks she must have gone to war. Zerbst is of Germany. Then you will return to your country. Saito realizes that the battlefield is very difficult, and he needs to go to save his master. While filling up on gas, Saito starts the plane, but realizes that he doesn't have enough space. But he ends up getting a boost from Charlotte. The girl won't be able to see Saito fight alone. She decides to go and help with him. Zerbs. Meanwhile, the war is in full swing. The princess group is losing. While he was having a lot of difficulty, suddenly, Saito appears defeating several dragons, and everyone is in shock at Saito's strength. Seeing that there isn't much that can be done, and he needs to act now, he suddenly appears in front of the boy, dodging with ease. Wind dragons are faster than fire dragons. Dodging the blows, Saito appears behind the man's back, but is unable to do anything because he has no bullets. Suddenly, the cheap bandit appears at the scene again to be beaten again. Geisha launches his clay strike to melt it, while Zerbst uses his fire strike to defeat the beast. Leaving with the fire on fire, they decide to go help Saito, who is in trouble. Hitting the man, Louise jumps off the dragon without thinking twice, and her friends help her. Even so, the man was not defeated and returned with his dragon. When she sees Saito in danger, she can't stand still and needs to help him. When you least expect it, Saito's power becomes stronger. This leads Louise to become enchanted by the power of the vacuum, suffering several bombings against the plane that is close to crashing. But Louise manages to use the power of the vacuum in the season. Together, they defeated the enemy group and emerged as winners of the war. However, Saito was unable to return home because the eclipse was over. The scene returns to Saito's friends, where they end up being controlled by the power of the water spirit, the treasure she seeks. When you least expect it, Geisha appears and, with a 1-centimeter branch, defeats the man. Returning to Saito, she renews the contract with the boy with a kiss. And so the anime Zero no Tsukaima first season comes to an end.